Meanwhile, the South African Union of Students, SAUS, says it's learned with a great concern that amongst the 62 confirmed cases of the COVID-19 coronavirus in the country, one of them is a student at the Wits University, which has since prompted university management to force 350 other additional students who might have been in contact with a student in their lecture into self-quarantine. The union has also raised concerns with the lack of urgency afforded to the higher education sector, which presents a big risk of exposure and transmission, according to them. Wits University announced that a medical student who was quarantined, and the Higher Education Minister Blade Nzimande also announced this morning that the UCT, that's the University of Cape Town, has one confirmed case, a lecturer at that institution. Bongani Mahlangu is the National Executive Member of SAUS, and he joins us now live in studio to take the discussion further. Good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for coming through.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
All right, so let's just talk to your concerns, really. You talk about a lack of urgency afforded to the higher education sector. What is it that you wanted the minister to have done that he hasn't?
What would have liked to have been done is a suspension of the academic program. And that suspension would have not been detrimental to the sector on the basis that we are moving towards recess in any case. Because as you have mentioned in your introduction, that we already have one student that has been confirmed to have contracted. We have 350 other students who are at risk. And those are just known people, because the student might have moved around on campus or at residence where they are currently housed. At the UCT, we have an academic who is confirmed to have contracted. That academic would have probably presented a lecture to students, and we do not know those what would have happened from that engagement or that interaction. And also listening to the president's statement last night, the president only speaks about basic education, which is your primary and high schools. But if you look at our sector, it has over 1 million universities alone, but the post-schooling sector has over 2 million people, and it's congested spaces. In a lecture hall at any given time of day, you have over 100 students. So now, if you're saying not less than or not more than 100 should gather in one central location, and we are saying on average our lecture halls are 250 students, and you're not saying anything about that, so it gives us that sense.
But aren't you satisfied with what the Minister of Higher Education, Dr. Blade Nzimande, was telling the media this morning, that institutions have been encouraged to suspend contact classes or contact lecturers and perhaps use technology going forward? Is it not sufficient?
We're not satisfied on the basis that we have always advocated for integrated or so-called blended learning, using technology to present certain lectures to students, not having students to always have to be in contact with each other or the lecturer, using your media, your internet and so forth and so on. But that has not really happened at our institutions. So now, if we then say that we are just moving to this blended learning or blended integrated learning at this point, at this pace, it will not work out. It won't be sustainable. It will collapse. So that is why we are saying that we cannot have that solution as a sustainable solution if it is to be presented as a solution in any case. But what we do take away from the minister's statement is that we will be meeting tomorrow, and probably after tomorrow's engagement, then we'll have a solid way forward.
But I think he has already made it clear that you can't just shut down institutions of higher learning. There are a number of factors to consider. He made mention of the fact that you have to consider students who are living at residential areas as to what's going to happen to them.
And we have made that consideration. And we're also proud of certain institutions that have also made the consideration. Would make reference to your UCT that said students can go home. They will even assist those that cannot make it home with the finances to get home. You look at your Stellenbosch University that said those that can go home, and those that cannot go home can stay at rest, and then they will have to then adhere to a certain hygiene regime that the institution will present to them. So now we're saying that we have noted all those things, but then we cannot have the students, even if you are saying the students should not go, or maybe classes are suspended, but students should remain in residences. Students will not stay in their residences. That's the thing. They will not self-quarantine. They will not isolate themselves from other students, because students are social people. So they will go to recreational spaces on campus, and that then risks students spread, if there is any, at those institutions, more especially at your urban institutions. Because if we have been looking at where the geographies of which the coronavirus has been spreading, and we find that it's more especially urban at this point, and in terms of universities, is more more urban universities than rural institutions. So those students are more at risk than any other students in the country.
But do you not also get a sense that some institutions of higher learning are already flexible on the matter, because we've seen some correspondence that some institutions have postponed and cancelled their graduation ceremony. So you do have universities who are already taking those precautionary measures as it is.
Exactly, and we applaud those institutions. In fact, I was counting even before we started. So far we have 11 institutions that have issued out statements, and all in all, or generally, they are sharing that sentiment. Suspension of graduations, suspension of other mass gathering events at those institutions, and we applaud that, and we want that to continue to the entire 26 institutions, because that shows seriousness in terms of combating the spread.
All right, so what's that one important thing that you're going into a meeting with the minister tomorrow?
We're saying that suspend your contact teaching or teaching and learning.
Which is something that he has suggested already?
He has not really suggested it with that level of severity or with that level of importance, because what the minister is trying to do is he wants to find a way of getting the academic program continuing under these tough conditions, and we are saying that it cannot continue. What is important with regards to the academic program is saving the integrity of the qualifications or this academic year. So as long as you can save the integrity but discontinue classes and have students go home, those that are willing to go home, it's still fine. So until he makes an announcement that indeed that is what he wants, maybe it's something that will happen tomorrow, we'll see, then we'll fully support it. But at the moment, it's not that. And hence, the universities have been communicating individually as to what they are doing, communicating individually as to if they're discontinuing, continuing, or whatever the case may be. So there's no coordination in the sector at the moment. And we hope that coordination will come tomorrow when a statement is issued by USAF, which represents vice chancellors, a communication is issued by us as the South African Union of Students, Department of Education, and other stakeholders, but communicating one consistent message: discontinuation until we can find a solution.
All right. All right, so we wait and see what happens and what comes out of that meeting tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thanks.
All right, that's Bongani Mahlangu. He's the National Executive Member of the South African Union of Students. That's SAUS talking to us about their concerns really as students' union regarding what they call the lack of urgency when addressing COVID-19 to tertiary institutions.